Hello students, my name is Gaurav Bansal and we are going to start a session regarding the trend analysis of Indian economy questions in the paper 3 of the GS papers in the means examination. So as we know, Indian economy is one of the key area in paper 3. So what has been the nature of those questions? Is there any pattern over there that can be observed? And how we can analyze the questions that have been asked in the recent years? So if you look at the nature of questions, then the nature of questions has changed a bit. And if you look at the areas from where questions are asked, over there we will not see much of a change. Generally, the division is still the similar that it used to be. Just that some areas questions are not coming in last 2-3 years, whereas from other areas more questions have been asked in recent time. But in general, if we see, there are in general the similar kind of division that we have in the agriculture, in budgeting, in other aspects of economics. So on average we have seen 7 to 9 questions. On rare occasion we have seen 10 questions also. So 7 to 9 questions on the Indian economy. And that means that it accounts for roughly 40 to 45% weightage in the paper. And this section hence becomes very important. Now let us look at the key areas here. So we can divide the Indian economy syllabus into 7 major areas. The first is Indian economy and related issues. What do we mean by Indian economy and related issues? The evolution of Indian economy, the growth of Indian economy, the performance of Indian economy, planning, reforms, all of them, they are in this aspect. Okay? Planning, reforms, growth, that is aspect of the Indian economy and related issues. Then another area is inclusive growth and issues arising from it. So welfare related issues. Okay, in this we have questions on poverty, and we have questions on inequality, so these are the questions particularly from inclusive growth and the issues. Welfare, poverty, inequality, and particularly inclusive growth itself, which is about the distribution of resources in the economy. Again, a topic related to the inequality. So this is our second topic. And then government budgeting, which includes the important topics of course, as budget is mentioned, that is there. And then it includes the taxation, tax reforms, topics such as GST. It includes the expenditure aspects, so questions on subsidies. It also includes questions regarding, for example, performance in education and health. So that is part of government budgeting. So that is a major section. And then we have 3 portions from agriculture. So we have the cropping pattern, then irrigation, and then agriculture. So this is quite clear what these areas talk about. And then lastly, we have industry, infrastructure and economic reforms. So when I said reforms here, we are talking about the broader 1991 reforms and how it affected the Indian economy. Whereas when we say reforms now, then basically reforms in the industry that are ongoing, reforms in, let us say, infrastructure. Although the areas, banking and external sector, which is international trade, etc., that is not mentioned in our syllabus. Hence, we have not covered it here. But even from them, we have seen questions. So, at present, trade is also clubbed here with industry, infrastructure, economic issues, or Indian economy and related issues, depending upon the nature of question. So, those questions are covered within topic 1 and topic 7. Basically, all the sectors of Indian economy, whether it is industry, infrastructure, whether it is trade, whether it is services, all of that is part of the topic number 7. So, if we look at the division in this manner, then the distribution would look like this. Okay. Yes. So, general question on Indian economy, where we have seen questions on performance. We have seen 1 to 2 questions in recent years. Sometimes, in fact, we have seen that question have been avoided from this section also. We have not seen a question from that area. For example, in recent years, we have seen a consistency of questions here. So, for example, last year, the question was on V-shaped recovery of Indian economy, and another question regarding the performance, regarding the trade. So, that is captured here. Similarly, another question related to the performance was asked in 2020. So, definitely, whatever is the performance of Indian economy in broader way, that Indian economy is growing better, is growing slow, is stabilizing in a better way, is slowing down. All of that we need to understand properly, and we need to understand all the dimensions of that very clearly. And from those areas we have seen questions. For example, V-shaped recovery that was asked. So we had to identify that the nature of pattern that we observed. For example, how we can say it was V-shaped recovery in this case. So for example, if this was the pattern of the growth of Indian economy, like Indian economy was growing like this in last 20 years, then suddenly we saw a decline like this because of the COVID problem. So in 2019, if we are here, then by 2020 we were here. However, now in 2022 we have made a recovery. So this is a V-shaped recovery because we can observe the shape. So this question was asked straight from the economic survey. In fact, if you observe this area, most of the questions that have been asked in your topic 1, the economic survey is the common source for such question. Okay. Generally, the performance of Indian economy is reviewed in the economic survey. So those 2 questions, 1 question, whenever they have been asked, mostly there has been a direct or quite a visible question from survey itself. So first topic, survey is a good source to cover that. And then the question on inclusive growth. In fact, in last 2 years, 3 years, we have seen direct question. In fact, the topic was also the same. 2 times there has been a direct question on the inclusive growth. And then on 1 occasion, we had the relationship between inclusivity and the sustainability. So this also includes the sustainable development, inclusive growth, sustainable development, inequality, poverty. Such questions are here. And usually if you see the pattern of these questions are generally theoretical, and the area from where the nature of question is picked from, that is the NCERT books. If you look at the nature of this section, that is NCERT largely. Of course, in writing your answer, you can refer to current affairs, you can refer to some of the recent events, Niti Aayog reports, international reports, you can refer to large number of literature for that purpose. But the key source material for these questions, if we try to identify a pattern, it was the NCERT. The next is government budgeting. Okay, so questions on taxation, questions on expenditure, subsidies, deficit, they are from the budgeting section. And over here also, economic survey is really a good source to update you. Of course, you need to know the theoretical basics here. So you need to be aware of the macroeconomic details, you need to be aware of the impact of taxation, etc. So that is obviously there. But apart from that, economic survey captures the performance of the budget. So for example, the survey is released just before the budget, and it talks about the performance of the previous year budget. It compares the number, it gives you a review on them. It talks about the actual achievement of the last 2 years budget. So the budgetary review is provided by survey, and it comments on the spending on education and health. The survey comments on the performance of different taxes. So for example, the question that was asked on GST regarding the revenue potential, regarding the center-state distribution that we have seen, both the questions were directly from your economic survey. So survey is not a book. Definitely you need to study the topic first. With survey, what will happen, you will understand the current performance of that in the context of Indian economy. So that is what survey will help you. That is how it helps. Okay. Now, next area is major crops and the cropping pattern in various parts of the country. This is an area where sometimes questions is there and sometimes questions are skipped also. So from this area, if we will see, then in many years, in fact 2019-20, there was no question, and even if question is asked, that is not absolutely straight on the cropping pattern itself, that is broader regarding the nature of cropping, regarding the farming methods. So that area is captured here. Okay, and for this area, again, this is a theoretical, this is a static portion of the agriculture. So for this topic, you need to refer to the textbooks. Okay, whatever textbook you are using, whether it is, let us say, Mishra and Puri, Dattan Sundaram, Ramesh Singh, Sanjeev Verma, or any other book. So the book which provides you the static portion or your coaching notes. So that portion is the static portion. And generally questions are quite straightforward. Next is regarding the irrigation. From this section, in fact, we have seen the least number of questions in recent years. Okay, 3. And even the nature of those questions has been regarding the changes in the irrigation methods. For example, the changes in irrigation, how to improve the covering, drip irrigation, and let us say precision farming, or the other methods which can improve the water extension. So irrigation is also, like cropping pattern, is more of a static portion, and again if you combine these two, still the questions are very less. So these are two static portions of the syllabus from which we have seen a handful of questions sometimes. And it is in fact this area, the last section here, from where we have seen the maximum number of questions, agriculture. So agriculture is a big topic with a multitude of subtopics. So it covers the agriculture markets, it covers the MSP, it covers APMC, FCI, it covers PDS also. So we have seen such questions here. For example, 2016, 17, 18, continuously for 3 years, we saw questions on agriculture subsidy. Okay, so agriculture subsidy itself is also a very important topic, by the way. And then food processing industry. Regularly we have seen question on food processing industry also. Then the emerging topics such as contract farming. If you look at the pattern of agriculture, then some of the topics are static here. So definitely two of the topics we have mentioned separately, that is cropping pattern, irrigation. Then another static portion in agriculture is the land reforms. The land reform is another static portion in agriculture. And then another quite static portion is food processing industry. And from these two topics, again, we have seen significant questions. One of these two is asked every year, and this is quite a static portion again. So these are the areas where you can very easily score, okay, where things do not change a lot. You definitely have to update a bit. For example, in irrigation, there are some innovations. In FPI, you have to update with the government policies, for example, PM Sampada and some of the recent other policies. So they are there, but other than that, these are fairly easy questions. Agriculture is the easiest area to score if you look at the Indian economy. So the point is, if fair lot of your agriculture that is quite static in nature. The food processing, the land reforms, the irrigation and the cropping pattern. And then you have some of the technical questions and questions where you have to apply some economic concepts and logics. So then you have topics like MSP. You have topics like FCI and reforms. You have topics like food storage. Okay. You have topics like market reforms. You have topics on PDS, public distribution system. And then we have topic of agriculture subsidy. So these are some of the core economic areas where we have to apply some of the concepts and where things they regularly evolve and where current affairs or dynamic portion is there in agriculture. So if you look at the share of static versus the dynamic portion in agriculture, it is roughly equally divided. 50% of the questions, if we combine them, then roughly 30 questions have been asked from the agriculture section in, let us say, 6 years. So on average, 4 to 5 questions per year. You can consider on average 2 questions from 2 to 3 questions, in fact, from the static portion and 2 questions from the dynamic portion. That has been the pattern for us. Okay. Then we have also seen questions on finance within agriculture also. And then there was a time when the weightage of this sector was quite big, industry, infrastructure and economic reforms. But in last few years, we have not seen many questions from industry, infrastructure, etc. The question on trade, they were asked in the general economy. So over there we had the question on the trade. But over here, in last 3 years only one question. Before that, this section was quite regular. From this section, 1 to 2 questions were asked. In fact, here, 2 questions in 2017 from infrastructure directly. And here also, question on infrastructure. So continuously, topic of infrastructure was being picked up. But of late, we have not seen many questions, but still, this is an area which you have to prepare and there can be 1 to 2 questions on this area. What we have seen in recent past is increase in the number of static questions. Okay. So for example, the nature of questions that have been asked in inclusive growth in last 2 years, that was quite static. Similarly, the nature of question in agriculture also, the type of questions we have seen in last 2-3 years, they were also relatively static questions. So the theory part, the core textbook part, its weightage is increasing with time. While the budgeting and the general performance of economy, that is your most dynamic part, over where survey is very useful. So that is how we can analyze the pattern. So your static part is equally important. Roughly 40 to 50% of the questions from the static part are being asked, and then that definitely you need to cover from the core textbooks and the NCERTs. Once you have covered that, then you need to update that with the dynamics. For that you have to follow newspapers, you have to follow reports, you have to follow economic survey and other documents. So from that section also we have seen roughly similar number of questions. But yes, you cannot skip a topic and you cannot target a specific topic. Okay. And then in economics particularly, when you have to analyze a scheme, when you have to analyze a policy, government policy, over there, the Kurukshetra and Yojana magazine is quite useful, particularly. Economic survey and budget we have already mentioned, where survey is more important than the budget. But your Kurukshetra and Yojana magazines, they give you good case studies, how government schemes have had impact on ground, how they have changed people's life and how they are leaving an impact on the ground and how they are improving the things. So you need to identify those schemes which are covered in Kurukshetra and Yojana from time to time. Identify them, cover that, summarize that in 30-40 words. And that should be a good idea to write suggestions. So wherever you have to write about improvements, some examples, some suggestion, then you can talk about that this scheme was successful because of these features. Because Yojana not only talk about scheme, it talks about why it was successful, which feature made it most useful. So that is where the importance of Kurukshetra and Yojana magazine is there. The analysis of government schemes. Apart from that, you are not supposed to read it from cover to cover. For example, I read them regularly. I never read all the articles because they are not very relevant. It is not written for us. It is not written that students preparing for UPSC will take benefit. Kurukshetra, Yojana are written for Gram Panchayat, people involved in the planning. They are written for those people. Okay, so yes, there can be some information which is useful for us too, but it is not written for us. So on average 2 to 3 articles I find useful. You do not have to cover it from the cover to cover. So keep it in mind and cover it in this manner. As we can see the pattern, there are direct questions from survey, and I have highlighted the areas where direct questions from survey have been there. Okay. So I hope this discussion will be useful to you, and in many areas I've also mentioned that what was the area from where the question was also asked, what was the nature of that question. So now go and look at the past year questions detail and look at it and try to match it with this analysis, and then you can identify very clearly that how you have to prepare. So thank you.